Is there such a thing as peace? Coming up right after this.
That's unexpected. I must say, you fight well. Now put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Good afternoon, this is Lucky Lynx. I'm continuing this discussion on whether or not there is a magical war. Is there a magical war? If there is a magical war, would it explain things in the world? Would it explain what's happening in your life? And this concept I'd like to bring up now. Someone mentioned it on one of my last videos about a comment about hummingbirds. If you can go back and read it, it's very interesting. I would like to speak on the subject of peace. Is there such a thing as peace? And something that I learned when I was a kid. I've told you guys that I spent a lot of time in Chicago cemeteries, and I wrote a book on Chicago cemeteries. That was because back in Chicago we really didn't have woods, and we didn't have a lot of nature. But there were, at my house, the area I lived in was surrounded by 6 cemeteries within a mile. And there was one cemetery that was very close, or actually 2, they were connected, that were very close to my house, and I could walk to one of them. And when I was a kid, when things were kind of crazy, I would go to the cemetery and I would spend time, because it was a place where I could get some peace. And what used to happen was I would bring a book, and there was a particular bridge that was very peaceful, and the bridge was over a big, huge pond, and there were, I think at one point there were fish in the pond, because I remember my brother bringing home fish from that pond. But as I got older, the fish had disappeared for the reason I'm about to discuss. I learned a lot of things in that cemetery. One of the things that I learned spending time in cemeteries is that life is out there, and life is to be lived. That was one of the main things I learned from it. But there was something I learned about peace in that cemetery, and that particular pond that I used to hang out at, I noticed, because there was no other water source, there was no stream or anything coming into it. It was man-made. There was no other water source coming into it. It just sat. And because it just sat, it was peaceful. The water was peaceful. It didn't move. And because it didn't move, it got stagnant, it attracted mosquitoes, and it eventually killed the fish that were in that pond, the big goldfish that were in that pond, because there was no fresh water coming in. There were a lot of philosophies, preachings, teachings, things that people are saying, religious leaders that are saying that peace is the answer. And I always remember that peaceful pond that became stagnant and killed the fish that were in it. There was another thing that I learned in that cemetery that I found very interesting as well, and that was whenever I would go to read my book, I would be bothering no one. I would sit in there and I would read, and inevitably one of the groundskeepers would see me and start yelling at me to get out of there. Now, I was just a kid reading Jane Austen in the cemetery, so I wasn't bothering anything, I wasn't messing with anything, but there was this peaceful moment, and then the peaceful moment itself on the bridge or under the bridge always drew someone, either someone who wanted to come and start a fight or yell at me to get out of there or something. And usually I was minding my own business. A lot of you have probably had the experience, especially those of you who are introverted, and believe it or not, I've spent a good portion of my life pretty introverted. And especially when I was younger, I spent a lot of time thinking and reading. I spent a good portion of my life, with my face in a book. And I noticed that when you do that, when you're peaceful and you keep to yourself, or you try to create a peaceful situation, invariably something comes in and starts trying to shake it up. Now, I didn't understand the nature of this until years later when I started studying Tibetan Bon, and my master, His Holiness Padma Gampo Rinpoche, started teaching me the 5 energy doctrine and how elements come into being. And basically, you can see it in the world. Everything that the world is made up of all the elements, and if you'll notice, all of the elements either feed on or support each other. And the nature of creation itself, the way things come into being, is sort of active. Nothing can come into being and be unless it destroys something else. So because of that, it's sort of, and if you know this and watch this, you can start to see it with people. People either have a destructive or creative, supportive relationship with each other. And people either support each other or try to work against each other. And there's no such thing in these cases as peace, because the nature of the elements, the nature of the way this space is, won't allow it. For example, when peace happens, it's what happened in that cemetery. And the reason that I think I was drawn to that cemetery was because I was looking for some answer. I was looking for some answer about life and death. And as I spent my time in that cemetery, I realized that what was there was rotting. There was no new life, there was no new energy, there was no movement coming in. It was pure peace. It was creating stagnancy. And all that was there was literally rotting. The life that was once vital, that once moving, that was once wrathful, as it were, that was once very active, was now at peace. And when it was at peace, it rotted. And it taught me back then that when something is at peace, it sort of rots, it decays, it stagnates. So there's an awful lot of people out there telling us we're supposed to be peaceful, that that's the aim that we should have. And when they say that, I sort of laugh, and I remember those moments in the cemetery where everything around me was rotting, and even if I was at a peaceful moment, something would come along and go, hey, get the hell out of here, and then try to chase me out. Watch people who say they want peace. When they get it, I had this opportunity once to watch a woman. She always claimed that she wanted peace. She was always frustrated because she couldn't find peace. She couldn't find peace. She couldn't find peace. And then I would watch her, and when she actually got those moments of peace that she wanted, she was restless. She would watch TV. She would watch television shows that would actually screw with her mind. So she'd watch things like about true murders and people being having things stolen from them, and she would drink. And it was a very interesting situation, because when she got the peace that she wanted, she would actually use it to create chaos in her mind and to actually abuse herself. And she'd drink until she got drunk, and she'd say she wanted peace, but she's not the only one in the world who does that. Watch people who say they want peace. Watch people, what happens when they get peace. They get restless. They want to do something. They want to, because the nature of us is to sort of create, move, and do stuff and interact with stuff. And when we don't, when we want just peace, we're like those corpses in that cemetery. We sort of rot. Also, pay attention to how the elements work on each other. The whole world is nothing but elements interacting with each other. And those elements never stop. They're always moving, they're always interacting, they're always creating change. The I Ching, the Book of Changes, talks about how everything is constant change. Anyone who actually understands or has read any of the ancient stuff, like the I Ching, realizes that peace is stagnancy. It creates death. It creates decay. Change, movement, is what brings life into being. If you have peace, the flowers don't grow. If you have peace, the seasons don't change. If you have peace, people get stagnant and nothing ever happens in their life to bring them what it is they say they want. So if you're wanting peace, or you're saying peace, or you're preaching peace is the answer, but then at the same time you're asking to manifest something, well, then you're at war with yourself, because you can't manifest without breaking something down and bringing something else into being. If you're saying you want to grow, well, then you can't have peace, because growth is anathema to peace. If you say you want magic or something beautiful to come into being, well, then you're calling for the actual destruction of what is already here. So when I hear these world leaders and religious leaders and people say that we need peace, I wonder why. Why are they actually telling people that their goal should be to be like those corpses in that cemetery? I can't do this justice because the person who put it on the last video, she wrote a story about hummingbirds. So I suggest you go back and read that comment on that in the comment section. It was actually brilliant. It was brilliantly written. She said that she put a hummingbird feeder out for a little hummingbird, and the hummingbird came and started feeding on the feeder. And before long, what she noticed was a whole lot of hummingbirds started fighting with each other, slamming each other against the walls and against windows, trying to get to that feeder. This moment where she thought was really peaceful, this backyard area that she called her peaceful place. Once she hung this feeder up, the hummingbirds started like beating each other up in that space. Whenever there is a peaceful space, something is going to come in to fill it, create motion, and create action. It's the way things work. It reminds me of when I was a kid sitting by that bridge, and I realized there was no such thing as a peaceful bridge. Because when you have that moment of peace, something is going to come in to shake it up and change it. And that's how I learned that peace was a lie. Now, think about this. Those who are encouraging you to want that, to need that, to invoke that in your life, why do you suppose they're wanting you to invoke a state that creates decay, that creates stagnancy, and that creates disease? Because peace is sort of contrary to what we really are as vital, active, creative beings. Could there be something behind it, magically encouraging people to want stagnancy, death, and decay? I'm Lucky Lynx, as always, wishing you success and good fortune in all that you do. Hey, if you want a reading, you want to get a reading from me, 779-302-8009 or conjurehope@gmail.com. And if you'd like to learn how to read these babies' playing cards, I have a class on how to read the playing cards that is a super lot of fun. I also have one on how to read tarot, a beginning and an advanced intermediate class. I also have one on how to read the Mexican Loteria, and I have one on how to read the crystal ball, and two in Lenormand, one basic, one grand tableau. If you'd like to take any of these classes, 779-302-8009 or conjurehope@gmail.com. Please subscribe to these videos, share them everywhere, get the word out about this particular topic. I'm going to link the playlist of these videos regarding this topic at the end of this one. And for those of you who've donated, thank you so much for donating. I'm going to leave my PayPal, my Venmo in the thing below. And if you like these videos and they're making you think, then please feel free to donate. And I will be very appreciative of you as well. You guys have a great week. I will be posting the pick a card full moon video tomorrow.